My sister didn't invite me to her wedding, so I booked a luxury vacation instead. Then her wedding fell apart, and suddenly everyone needed me. Excluded from my sister's wedding, I decided to leave town and take a vacation instead. A few days later, after everything at the wedding unraveled, my entire family suddenly started blowing up my phone, desperately trying to get in touch with me. "You're overreacting. It's only a wedding," my mom had told me. The truth was, I hadn't even been invited to my own sister's wedding. So I made other plans and booked a trip. Then, not long afterward, my relatives couldn't stop calling and texting. I sat frozen, staring at my phone as I read the message for what had to be the third time. "Hey, just wanted to let you know the guest list is finalized and we had to make some really difficult cuts. Hope you understand. Love you." Difficult cuts. I kept repeating those words in my head. I wasn't some distant relative they barely knew, and I wasn't an old family friend who had faded away over the years. I was her brother. This was the same sister I had stood beside through every disaster, every heartbreak, every moment she questioned herself. And somehow when it mattered most, I had been crossed off the list like I barely existed. I kept looking at the screen while a slow, heavy feeling settled in my chest. I read the message again, almost expecting the words to magically change into something that actually made sense. Part of me wanted to laugh because it felt so unbelievable that I was convinced there had to be some kind of mistake. I grabbed my phone and called my mom. She picked up on the third ring, sounding cheerful like everything was perfectly normal. "Hey, sweetheart, what's going on?" I skipped the small talk completely. "I just got a message from Claire. She says the guest list is finalized and I'm not invited." There was a pause that lasted just long enough to confirm exactly what I had already been thinking. "Oh, honey," my mom sighed in that familiar voice she always used whenever she wanted me to feel like I was the unreasonable one. "It's just a wedding. Don't make such a big deal out of it." Just a wedding. Those words hit me like a punch, and I felt my stomach tighten. "Are you serious?" I asked, keeping my voice surprisingly steady. "Mom, I'm her brother. How am I not invited to my own sister's wedding?" She let out a little disapproving sound, like I was some little kid throwing a fit. "It's not personal. They just had to keep the guest list small." "Mom," I interrupted. "I literally just saw Claire's Instagram post. She invited 180 people. There was another moment of silence before she forced out an awkward little laugh. "Well, you know how these things go. Weddings cost a lot of money. Besides, maybe they figured you wouldn't mind sitting this one out." It honestly felt like someone had punched me in the gut. "Wouldn't mind?" I repeated. "Mom, I've been there for Claire every single time she needed me. I helped her move 3 different times, including one move at 2 a.m. after her landlord changed the locks earlier than promised. When she lost her job, we paid 1/3 of her rent for 4 straight months so she wouldn't have to move back home. After her last breakup, I was the one sitting with her on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m, telling her she deserved better. But now somehow, I'm not important enough to be there on one of the biggest days of her life." "Oh, stop being so dramatic," my mother replied with another tired sigh. "It's just one day." "You're overreacting." I let out a short laugh, but there wasn't anything funny about it. Overreacting? I already knew exactly how this would play out. I'd try to explain why I was hurt. My mom would brush my feelings aside, and sooner or later Claire would offer one of those empty apologies that didn't actually mean anything. Then everyone would expect me to move on like nothing had happened because that's what I had always done. This time was different. Something inside me finally gave way. If they didn't think I deserved a place at the wedding, then I wasn't going to force my way into their lives. I hung up and just sat there for a minute, phone still warm in my hand, and my mind drifted back to a night about 2 years earlier that I hadn't thought about in a long time. Claire had called me at almost midnight, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. She'd just failed a certification exam she needed for a new job, and she was convinced her life was falling apart. I drove 45 minutes to her apartment that night, sat with her on the kitchen floor because she said the couch felt too far away from the door, and stayed until nearly 4 a.m, talking her down. I took the next day off work without telling my boss the real reason. I never told anyone about that night, not because it was a secret, but because I genuinely didn't think it needed recognition. That's what family did for each other. Or at least that's what I'd always believed. Sitting there with a guest list message still glowing on my screen, I realized how naive that belief had been. I had spent years quietly showing up, and Claire hadn't even bothered to save me a single seat. I started scrolling through my phone. Well, if I wasn't going to be at Claire's wedding, then I was going to spend that weekend somewhere I'd actually enjoy. The more I thought about everything, the more frustrated I became. I wasn't the kind of guy who got worked up over small things. I'd spent years letting stuff slide. Claire forgot my birthday more times than I could count. She usually only reached out when she wanted a favor. My mom always expected me to be the understanding one, while Claire could do just about anything without facing consequences, but this was on a completely different level. I wasn't about to sit at home feeling sorry for myself while the rest of the family celebrated their perfect little wedding without me. If I wasn't important enough to be included, then I wasn't going to make myself available when they needed me either. I pulled out my laptop and started searching for flights. If Claire was going to have what she called the happiest day of her life, then I was determined to give myself the best week of mine. The whole trip came together in less than an hour. I booked an all-inclusive stay at a 5-star resort in the Maldives, complete with an overwater villa, incredible ocean views, spa treatments, and access to a private lagoon. For years, I had talked myself out of taking a vacation like that because I thought it was too expensive. This time, I didn't hesitate. I wasn't booking a getaway just to relax. I was sending a message. By the time the wedding weekend finally arrived, I was already settled into a first-class seat with a glass of champagne in my hand. Before takeoff, I posted a picture of myself stretched out comfortably with my drink and added the caption, "Guess I got cut from the guest list, but I think I'll survive." People reacted almost immediately. A few of my cousins replied with laughing emojis, and my aunt, who was probably the only reasonable person in the family, commented, "Good for you. You should have taken me with you." The response I enjoyed the most came from my mom. She fired off 3 texts back to back. "Where are you?" Then, "Are you seriously skipping your sister's wedding because of this?" And finally, "You're being petty." Petty? I was just getting started. Instead of arguing, I sent her a picture of the beach, showing off the bright white sand, the crystal clear blue water, and a view that looked like it belonged on a postcard. Underneath it, I wrote, "Perfect view." After that, I turned my phone off. I wasn't going to let anyone guilt trip me into feeling bad. Not anymore. For the first time in years, I stopped putting my family's feelings ahead of my own. I chose myself for once, and honestly, it felt amazing. By the time I reached the resort, every bit of guilt I had been carrying was completely gone. As soon as I stepped outside the airport, I felt the warm ocean breeze against my face, carrying the scent of salt water and tropical flowers. A private driver was already waiting for me in a sleek black SUV stocked with cold bottled water and chilled towels. I couldn't help but smile. This was a whole lot better than sitting through a wedding where I clearly wasn't wanted. As we drove along the coastline toward the resort, I leaned back and realized I had absolutely made the right decision. Back home, my family was probably caught up in the last-minute wedding preparations. My mom was most likely making excuses about why I wasn't there, and Claire was probably laughing with her bridesmaids without giving me a second thought. Meanwhile, things were completely different where I was. Nobody treated me like an afterthought. Here, I came first. For once, I was my own priority. The resort looked like something straight out of a dream. The lobby was filled with towering palm trees growing indoors, and the open-air design let the ocean breeze drift through the entire building. Before I'd even finished checking in, someone handed me a tropical cocktail with a smile. One of the staff members personally showed me around the property, pointing out the sunset deck, the colorful coral reef just beyond the private lagoon, and the overwater spa. She joked that they could work out a knot in my shoulders that I probably didn't even realize I'd been carrying since that conversation with my mom. When I finally stepped into my room, I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe there were floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, a private balcony suspended above the ocean, and the biggest, most comfortable-looking king-sized bed I had ever seen. I dropped my bags by the door, walked out onto the balcony, and stood there for several minutes, taking in every second of the view. Then, because I couldn't resist, I snapped another picture and posted it online with the caption, "When one door closes, another one opens," preferably to a beachfront suite with unlimited margaritas. I knew someone in my family would eventually see it, and honestly, I hoped they all did. Maybe for once, they'd get a small taste of what it felt like to be the one left out. And as far as I was concerned, I was just getting started. My first full day at the resort couldn't have gone any better. I woke up to room service with fluffy pancakes, fresh tropical fruit, and coffee so good it made every cup I'd ever had back home seem disappointing. After breakfast, I spent the day doing exactly what I wanted without answering to anyone. There were no obligations, no family drama, and no stress. Just me, the ocean, and the freedom to enjoy myself. By the afternoon, I was stretched out on a lounge chair beside the infinity pool with a martini in my hand, watching the waves roll gently across the water. Every now and then, I'd glance at my phone, not because I wanted to hear from my family, but because I was curious to see how people were reacting to my vacation photos. The comments were priceless. My cousin Derek wrote, "Bro, where are you even?" Aunt Diane commented, "Okay, now you're just showing off." One of my old college buddies chimed in with, "Dude, next time you have to invite me." Then I noticed a notification that made me grin. Clara had viewed my post, so now she was paying attention. I could almost picture her sitting in the bridal suite with a cheap glass of champagne in her hand, scrolling through Instagram and finding pictures of me relaxing in paradise, while she was busy stressing over every little wedding detail. Good. I leaned back, took another sip of my drink, and smiled to myself. Enjoy your big day, sis. I hope it's everything you wanted. That evening, before things at home fell apart, I decided to treat myself to dinner at the resort's signature restaurant, a small candlelit place built right at the edge of the lagoon where the tables seemed to float above the water. I went alone, and I wasn't in the least bit bothered by it. The host sat me at a table for one near the railing, and a waiter named Thomas recommended the grilled mahi with passion fruit glaze, telling me it was the chef's proudest dish. I ordered it along with a glass of white wine, and for the first time in what felt like months, I just sat there and enjoyed a meal without checking my phone every 5 minutes or half listening because someone in my family needed something. An older couple at the next table struck up a conversation with me, celebrating their 30th anniversary. And when I mentioned I was traveling solo, the husband raised his glass and said something that stuck with me. Good for you, son. Most people wait their whole lives for someone else's permission to enjoy themselves. I raised my glass back and thought, if only he knew the half of it. However, when the sun started dropping toward the horizon the next day, the mood shifted. Suddenly, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, I ignored it, figuring more people were commenting on my pictures. Then I looked at the screen and noticed who was calling. Mom, Claire, Cousin Derek, even Uncle Grant. One call after another, followed by a flood of text messages. I frowned and finally unlocked my phone. The very first message was from my mom. Call me, it's an emergency. An emergency? What, because I wasn't at the wedding? I let out a slow sigh and honestly wondered if I even cared enough to respond. Before I could decide, another message came through from Derek. Dude, you're never going to believe what just happened. Well, that definitely got my attention. I sat up in my chair and started scrolling through the flood of messages. It didn't take long before I realized the universe had handed me the greatest wedding gift I could have imagined. Claire's picture-perfect wedding had completely fallen apart. I kept reading through the endless stream of texts, and with every new message, the grin on my face got a little bigger. Derek had written, "Bro, you seriously dodged a bullet." My mom's message read, "Call me right now. This is a family emergency." Then there was one from Claire herself. "Please, where are you? I need you." Even my dad, who almost never texted me first, had sent a single line. "Your sister needs her family right now." Grandma somehow had gotten hold of someone's phone and dictated a message that just read, "Come home. This is disgraceful behavior from everyone involved." I wasn't entirely sure who everyone included, but knowing Grandma, it was probably the whole family, myself included, out of pure principle. I leaned back into my lounge chair, took another sip of my cocktail, and kept scrolling. Then I came across a text from my cousin Renee that actually made me laugh out loud. According to her, the groom had walked out in the middle of everything. I nearly spit out my drink. He actually left? Honestly, I couldn't have imagined a more unbelievable ending. My curiosity finally got the better of me, so I sent Derek a quick message. "What do you mean he left?" His reply came almost instantly. "Dude, everything blew up during the reception. He and Claire got into this huge fight, and then he just turned around and walked out. Literally left the venue." A second message followed right after. And then, Uncle Grant and your dad started screaming at each other about who had embarrassed the family. Grandma started crying. The venue shut the bar down early. The whole place turned into complete chaos. A third message came in a moment later, and this one made me actually laugh out loud in the middle of the pool deck, drawing a couple of curious looks from other guests. Oh, and the DJ apparently just kept playing music through the entire meltdown because nobody told him to stop. So there's 90 seconds of video floating around of Grandma yelling at Aunt Diane while some upbeat pop song plays in the background. It's the most unintentionally hilarious thing I've ever seen. I couldn't help leaning back with a satisfied smile. Claire had decided she didn't need me at her wedding, but now that everything was falling apart, suddenly everyone wanted me involved. I could already hear my mom saying exactly what I expected. "You need to fix this." Claire's devastated. Not happening. The next message I opened was from Claire. "Please answer your phone. I need you." That almost made me laugh. Funny how I suddenly mattered. I took a slow breath before typing a single reply. "Sorry, I'm a little busy enjoying my overreaction. Hope the wedding was fun." I hit send, blocked her number, and then blocked my mom's too. Just to be safe, I blocked Derek as well, in case they convinced him to help guilt-trip me into coming back. After that, I switched my phone to Do Not Disturb, waved the bartender over, and ordered another drink. While my family was dealing with total chaos back home, I was sitting in paradise. For the first time in a long time, none of it felt like my problem. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of waves rolling gently onto the shore. The warm breeze carried the smell of salt water and tropical flowers through the open balcony doors. I stretched, yawned, and for one peaceful minute, I almost forgot everything that had happened back home. Almost. When I picked up my phone, I saw that even after blocking nearly everyone, there were still more than 30 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. They had clearly started borrowing coworkers' phones, calling from landlines, or using anything else that wasn't blocked just to get through to me. Somehow, a few voicemail messages had still made it through. Against my better judgment, I tapped the first one and pressed play. My mom's voice came through immediately, sounding completely panicked. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is not the time for one of your tantrums. Your sister is devastated, and we need you here. This family is supposed to stick together." I rolled my eyes before deleting the voicemail without giving it another thought. The next message was from Claire. She was crying. "I don't understand why you're doing this. You're my brother. I need you. Please, just call me back." Click. Deleted. The voicemail after that was the one that actually made me laugh. Derek was talking in a whisper like he was hiding from someone. "Dude, just so you know, Mom and Aunt Diane are already talking about showing up at your apartment when you get back. Figured you'd want the warning. Oh, and Grandma keeps saying the wedding was cursed because you weren't there. It's honestly the funniest thing I've seen all year." That voicemail? I kept it. I set my phone down on the bed and walked out onto the balcony. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the ocean with a warm golden light. I stood there for a moment, took a deep breath, and let the peaceful morning wash over me. Back home, everyone was running around trying to contain the disaster. Meanwhile, I was standing in a bathrobe with a fresh espresso in my hand, completely relaxed and enjoying one of the best decisions I'd ever made. The part that almost felt satisfying was knowing they were finally experiencing exactly what I had felt after being left off the guest list. Unwanted. Forgotten. Excluded. There was something strangely poetic about that. And honestly, I still wasn't finished. I picked up my phone, snapped a picture of breakfast, and smiled. Fluffy pancakes, fresh fruit, and a bright mimosa that looked almost too perfect to drink. I uploaded the photo with the caption, "Starting the day completely stress-free. Hope everyone's doing okay back home." Then, just for my own amusement, I looked through the blocked messages, smiled at the growing list of missed calls, and ordered another mimosa. I had absolutely no intention of calling anyone back. They could deal with the mess they had created on their own. I was on vacation, and I planned to enjoy every minute of it. Before all that, I actually spent an entire morning doing something I never in a million years would have booked for myself back home: a full spa day. The overwater spa I'd noticed on my first tour ended up having an opening, and on a whim, I signed up for what the menu called the Island Reset. 90 minutes of a deep tissue massage followed by some kind of coconut and sea salt scrub that left my skin feeling like it belonged to someone else entirely. The whole thing took place in a private hut built out over the lagoon with a glass panel in the floor so you could watch fish swim underneath you while you were being worked on, which sounded gimmicky until I actually experienced it and found myself completely hypnotized by it instead. The therapist, a soft-spoken woman named Priya, asked at one point if I was carrying a lot of tension in my shoulders, and when I laughed and said something like, "You have no idea," she just nodded, like she'd heard some version of that sentence 1,000 times before from 1,000 different guests running from 1,000 different messes back home. I walked out of there feeling like an actual weight had been lifted off me, and for the first time since I'd landed, I genuinely didn't think about the wedding, my mom, or Claire for hours at a stretch. It was, without exaggeration, one of the most relaxed I'd felt in years, and I remember thinking that if this was what I'd been missing out on by always putting everyone else first, I had some serious catching up to do. With the whole day free and nothing pulling at my attention, I decided to sign up for a snorkeling excursion the resort offered out to a reef about 20 minutes off the coast by boat. I almost talked myself out of it, thinking I'd rather just lie by the pool, but I figured if I was already committed to living my best life out of spite, I might as well actually live it. The boat held maybe a dozen people, and I ended up next to a guy named Marcus, a teacher from Chicago, traveling by himself after a rough breakup. We got to talking while the crew set up the gear, and when he asked what brought me to the Maldives alone, I gave him the short version of the wedding story. He laughed so hard he nearly choked on his water bottle. "So, you basically ghosted your sister's wedding for a 5-star resort," he said, "and now they're begging you to come save the day you weren't invited to?" When I put it that way, it did sound almost too perfect to be real. The water underneath the boat was a color I didn't think existed outside of postcards, somewhere between turquoise and glass, and when we finally jumped in, the reef below was covered in fish so bright they looked almost fake. drifting lazily around coral formations the size of small cars. For almost 2 hours, I didn't think about my phone once. It was the first stretch of real, uninterrupted peace I'd had in longer than I wanted to admit. Around lunchtime, I was stretched out beneath a private cabana with another tropical drink in my hand, complete with one of those little paper umbrellas, when my phone buzzed again. This time, the message was from my cousin Renee. "Okay, I know you're angry, and honestly, you have every reason to be. But you have to hear what happened after the wedding. Call me. Trust me. You're going to love this." I slowly raised an eyebrow. Renee had always been the one cousin who seemed to have common sense. If she was telling me I needed to hear something, then it was probably worth taking the call. So even though part of me didn't want to get involved, I called her back. She answered before the first ring had barely finished. "Oh my God, you finally picked up," she said, sounding way too excited to keep it together. "Okay, are you sitting down?" I looked around my private cabana. There was nothing but shade above me, the endless ocean stretching out in front of me, and an ice-cold drink resting in my hand. "Yeah," I replied with a grin. "I think this is about as good a place as any to hear whatever you've got." Renee laughed so hard she had to catch her breath. Okay, after the groom walked out, Claire completely lost it. And I don't mean she cried a little. I'm talking full-on screaming, sobbing and throwing things at people in the wedding party. I couldn't help smirking. Sounds about right. She kept going, barely able to contain herself. Everyone was trying to calm her down, and then Mom overheard Aunt Diane saying the whole disaster probably could have been avoided if you'd been there. I frowned. "Wait, what?" Renee giggled. "Seriously, Aunt Diane said you've always been the one who steps in whenever Claire falls apart. She actually said that if you'd been there, you probably would have talked the groom into staying or somehow fixed the whole situation like you always do." I burst out laughing. "So let me make sure I've got this straight. The same family that decided I wasn't important enough to invite is now blaming me because I wasn't there to save the wedding?" "Oh, it gets even better," Renee said. Mom told Aunt Diane she was being ridiculous, and the two of them started arguing right in the middle of the reception with half the guests watching. She barely paused before continuing. Then Grandma jumped into the argument and said Claire brought the whole thing on herself because she'd offended the universe by not inviting her own brother. I nearly choked on my drink. Renee was laughing so hard now that she could hardly finish the story. Grandma actually pointed at Claire and said, "If you treated your family better, you wouldn't be standing here alone in your wedding dress." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head with a smile. "Wow, that's incredible." "Oh, and there's one more thing," Renee added. "The wedding planner apparently quit on the spot, right in front of everyone, and told Claire's mother-in-law that she'd, quote, never worked with a more disorganized guest list in 15 years of doing this, before walking straight out to her car." "You're kidding," I said, though at this point, almost nothing about this story could have surprised me. "I wish I was." And then, after all that, your mom tried calling the groom's family to smooth everything over. His mother just smiled at her and said, "That's your problem now." I had to set my drink down because I was laughing so hard I almost spilled it. "So," I said once I finally caught my breath, "where does that leave Claire now?" Renee let out a long sigh. She's still crying, still blaming everyone except herself. The last thing I heard was that she was trying to throw together some kind of backup plan to save the wedding. But honestly, I don't think she's coming back from this. I smiled and slowly shook my head. You know what the best part is? What? I took another slow sip of my drink before answering. I honestly don't care. Renee broke into another fit of laughter. "I can't even blame you," she said. "I just figured you'd appreciate knowing that karma finally caught up with her." "Believe me," I replied with a grin. "I definitely appreciate the update. Thanks for letting me know." "Anytime," she said. "Now go enjoy the rest of your vacation. And for what it's worth, I really think you made the right decision." After we hung up, I leaned back in my chair feeling more at peace than I had in a very long time. They wanted to celebrate their wedding without me. In the end, their own selfish choices turned that big day into a complete disaster. I lifted my drink toward the sky and made a quiet toast to what had easily become one of the best decisions I'd ever made. After that, I switched my phone off, settled back into my cabana, and let the ocean breeze carry away the last traces of guilt I'd been holding on to. I didn't touch my phone for the rest of the day. Instead, I booked a sunset cruise, relaxed while the warm sea air rolled in, and finished the evening with an incredible 5-star dinner right beside the water. While my family back home was still trying to clean up the mess left behind by Claire's wedding, I was enjoying the best steak I'd ever tasted. For a brief moment, I wondered if I should actually feel sorry for her. Then I remembered how easily she had erased me from one of the biggest moments of her life. That feeling disappeared just as quickly as it came. I took another sip of wine, snapped one final picture of the incredible view, and posted it with a simple caption. Zero regrets. With a satisfied smile, I powered my phone off once again. They could sit there and deal with the consequences of their own decisions. I was done being the person they only remembered when they needed someone to rescue them. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. There was no guilt weighing on me, no stress, and no surprise family crisis waiting for me to solve it. It was just me, the sound of the waves outside, and an entire day with nothing on the schedule except relaxing. I stretched, ordered breakfast through room service, and, out of curiosity more than anything else, turned my phone back on. That turned out to be a mistake. Within seconds, the notifications started pouring in. Mom, you need to stop acting like a child and call me. Claire, I can't believe you're doing this to me. You're so selfish. Then another message from my mom. This isn't funny. Claire is heartbroken. Do you even care? An unknown number, probably my aunt, sent another one. We have to fix this family before it's too late. I let out a groan and shook my head. It was almost unbelievable how quickly they had gone from pretending I didn't matter to acting like I was somehow responsible for putting everything back together. Then one message stood out from all the rest. It was from Renee. Okay, I know you're ignoring everybody, but please read this. Your mom is planning some big family meeting for when you get back. Just wanted to warn you. I couldn't help laughing. They actually believed I was going to come home, sit through some emotional lecture, and pretend none of this had ever happened. There was absolutely no chance of that. I replied to Renee almost immediately. Thanks for the warning, but I'm not going. She answered a few moments later. Wait, what do you mean? I smiled as I typed my response. I'm extending my vacation. They wanted me out of their lives for the wedding, so now I'm choosing to step away completely. I could almost picture the expression on her face, a mix of surprise and amusement. A few seconds later, another message popped up. Okay, that's honestly iconic. You have to tell me the whole story when you finally get back. Whenever that ends up being, LOL. I smiled, set my phone aside, and opened my laptop. A few minutes later, everything was set. With just a handful of clicks, I officially extended my vacation by another 10 days. 10 more days without family drama, without awkward conversations, and without being expected to solve problems that weren't mine. It would be just me, the ocean, and the freedom I'd been missing for years. My family had never really allowed me any peace, but now, for the first time, there was absolutely nothing they could do to take it away. Before heading down to the beach, I decided to send one final message. I sent it to both my mom and Claire. Oh, so now you want me around? Sorry, but I'm a little too busy enjoying my overreaction. Good luck cleaning up your own mess. I hit send, blocked both of their numbers one last time, and didn't look back. Then I set my phone aside, ordered another drink, and settled into my chair while the warm sunlight washed over me. The sound of the waves filled the air, and for the first time in a very long while, everything felt exactly the way it should. There was no guilt weighing on my shoulders. No stress pulling at my mind. No regrets about the choice I had made. Just peace. And as I sat there staring out at the endless blue water, I knew without a doubt that it was one of the best decisions I'd ever made. It would be almost 3 weeks before I turned my phone back on for good and unblocked everyone. By then, the 10 extra days had turned into something closer to a full reset. Long walks on the beach at sunrise, a scuba certification course I signed up for on a whim, and more quiet dinners for one than I could count, none of which I regretted for a single second. When I finally did unblock my family, the messages that came through weren't the panicked, guilt-driven texts from before. My mom had sent exactly one 3 days after the wedding that read differently than anything she'd said before. I think we owe you a real conversation when you're ready. No pressure, I'm sorry. Claire never did send anything that felt like a genuine apology, at least not right away, and I decided I was fine with that too. Some things I realized sitting on that balcony with the ocean stretched out in front of me don't need to be fixed immediately or even fixed by me at all. For the first time in my life, I wasn't in a hurry to make everyone else feel better. I was just going to enjoy my flight home and figure the rest out on my own time. The flight back was almost anticlimactic after everything. A quiet window seat, a bad in-flight movie I watched anyway, and a strange sense of calm I hadn't expected to still be carrying with me. Somewhere over the ocean, I found myself scrolling back through the photos from the trip. The beach, the reef, the sunset cruise, that ridiculous plate of pancakes on the first morning, and I realized none of them made me think about the wedding anymore. They just looked like a really good trip I'd taken, which I figured was exactly what it should have been all along instead of some big statement. When I landed and turned my phone back on for real this time, there wasn't a single frantic message waiting for me. Just my mom's one line from weeks earlier still sitting there unanswered, and a short text from Renee asking if I wanted to grab dinner and finally tell her everything in person. I smiled, grabbed my bag off the carousel, and typed back a simple, "Yeah, I'd like that." Whatever came next with my mom or with Claire, I figured I'd deal with it when I actually felt ready and not a moment before. For once, that felt like enough.